Welcome to the podcast, Speaking to Influence, Communication Secrets of the C-Suite. I'm Dr. Laura Sicola, your host, founder of Vocal Impact Productions, and author of Speaking to Influence, Mastering Your Leadership Voice. My guest today is Loren Howard, serial entrepreneur and founder of Prime Plus Mortgages in Scottsdale, Arizona. Now, Loren has also built and scaled pharmacies, lead generation marketing companies, real estate development and acquisition companies on top of it all. So, my goodness, Loren, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
Now, given all that you have done, not just with mortgages, but in particular, it seems like you've built companies in so many industries that people might say appear unrelated to each other. But what's a common thread with regard to the communication skills that you have needed to hone through that has taken you consistently through all of these different developments and all these different industries and companies?
I think I've invested a lot of time in some key employees and coaching them and bringing them along the way and helping them increase their skill sets when they followed me from company to company. And really, so we've been working together. And I think taking the time to invest into them and to help them grow has been very transformative for my ability to shift from one industry to the next.
And given the fact that you've started a lot of these companies from scratch, obviously you're starting them with a very small handful of people and then building out your staff, your employees, et cetera. And so it sounds like the development of your people is something that has to start from the very beginning. It's not that you wait until you've got a nice big company and then start to think about how to develop your people. It's something that needs to happen from the seed stage. Is that correct?
100%. And we have a core team of 4 or 5 of us that go from company to company, and we start with that foundation, and it's been that way for 10, 12 years. You need to invest in your people from day one because that's your most valuable asset.
Sure. And in doing that, or either since then, what's the biggest communication challenge that you, or perhaps they, are facing today, or that you have noticed as a trend with all these different organizations?
Communication challenge. I think we do a lot of outsourcing. And so a lot of times I think it's hard to find talent when you outsource and to get them on the same page as you. I would probably say that the outsourcing component would be the biggest challenge from a communication perspective.
Why?
Because you're dealing with different time zones and you're dealing with different people, and you have to really to find a high quality person, say in the Philippines or other places. It takes a long time of weeding through and interviewing and then there's excuses here. It's just a challenge. But when you do find one that's really, really good, they're way more cost effective and super smart and super driven. But trying to find them, it's a little bit like diamond in the rough searching, I would say.
Sure. And I think hiring in general, whether you're hiring somebody who's in your very same zip code or hiring somebody from the other side of the planet, quite literally, is always a challenge. There are things you always have to look for, but when it just adds an extra layer or 12 layers of complexity, when there is the time zone difference and the cultural differences and all of that on top of it. What do you think has been the most challenging part of finding good talent overseas to help build foundational companies?
I would say reliability, finding someone you think is good and then them not showing up and different excuses. I mean, I can't tell you how many times their grandmas got sick, you know what I mean? And so, I would say that the reliability aspect would be probably the most difficult.
But then when you find someone, it's much like hiring somebody in person. When you find the right person, it's an amazing fit, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. And like I've had, my main guy been with me for 11 years. He lives in India and he's been running with me since my first business, and he does everything. He's a ninja, and he's like a family member, but also he's amazing.
I'm in the same boat. I've had a couple of people working for me out in the Philippines, one who's there right now and one who was with me for at least 2 or 3 years. And just they are, I say they, I mean my specific people, not like, well, people from the Philippines in general, we're not generalizing by country. Sure. You find the person who's the perfect fit for your organization. And it's amazing that you can do that even when there's 10,000 miles between you.
I think there's a stigma people don't really understand it. Well, these people are super smart, super talented, super educated, super hardworking, but because someone can't visualize or hasn't dealt with it before and worked with them before, if overseas, they don't really understand it. It's kind of like a black box for them. What is this?
Right.
And then once you find a quality person and train them and onboard them and they stick with you, then you all of a sudden you realize, wow, you can get this done for like 1/10 of the cost.
Well, and I like having somebody in a different time zone night to day, quite literally for me, just because there's always somebody who is on at
Yep,
that point. So
100%.
there's always somebody who's monitoring the store, as it were.
And all of our outsourced employees work in my time zone, which that's another issue as well. That's what I meant with the time zone issues, is because we're trying to find someone who is used to working in the in the middle of the night, right, and then sleeping during the day, which is how my main guy Garnett has done it for 11 years. And so finding someone who's used to that schedule and is reliable and has the skill set and all of those things has been a little bit of a challenge. But when you find them, they're worth their weight in gold,
Absolutely. And in building all these companies, aside from finding good HR, excuse me, I should say good contractors, good employees, good people to build your team, what's been one big communication related mistake that you've made in that learning curve?
Yeah. So I had a compounding pharmacy where I had about 170 employees at one point in time. And one of the mistakes I made is two of my recruiters were kind of in a little bit of a dispute about something. And it was a high pressure industry, right? Highly regulated. We were growing so fast. And, I kind of lost my patience and temper with the argument and kind of barked out at one of them and hurt their feelings. And I think that, in hindsight, the lesson there would be, never react in emotion. Like always stop, take a breath, analyze the situation, because nothing's good is going to come out of anger. And I guess my next lesson would be the first to apologize and apologize fast. Swallow your pride, because that goes a long way. And everyone gets upset from time to time. But not everyone apologizes right away. People want to, they don't want to swallow their pride. They're stubborn. And I would say, and that goes with any relationship, whether it be business or personal, apologize fast and then often, and then also, maintain your composure.
Sure. So with that particular example at that moment that you were in that conversation, you realized you'd bitten somebody's head off or otherwise been indelicate in your words. Did you have a chance to apologize, or is this something you realize now that you should have done at the time?
No, I apologize right away. I kind of learned that skill set a long time ago. And I think it meant a lot, because I feel like we all kind of know when we're wrong immediately when we're wrong. It's just a matter of whether we justify it to ourselves or whether we try to brush it under the rug and think it's no big deal, or whether we have the courage to recognize and realize that we're wrong and be able to express that through apology.
It's funny, not funny, but I love the fact that a friend of mine several years ago drew a line of distinction between humiliation and humility, and said that the difference is that humiliation strips away dignity, but humility restores it.
100%. I love that.
And I think that's really critical to recognize when you do something like lose your patience with somebody and speak to them disrespectfully or embarrass them or something like that. You've just really stripped away dignity for both of you. And by having the humility to step back and own that and apologize for it and whatnot, that restores it for you and for them. It's not showing weakness. It's really showing a sign of strength of the best kind.
And I think that people get that wrong because they think vulnerability is weakness. And I think vulnerability is having the strength to be able to be vulnerable, because you need strength to be able to be vulnerable, right?
Sure. And to lead by example. How can you expect people to be honest and be humble and a little vulnerable with you if you won't lead by example when you're at the top?
Exactly. I run a charity as well, and when we do our networking and try to get people to open up, we always have the board members go first and have them go deep. When they go deep, it sets a tone for everyone else to be open up and be vulnerable, and I think it's valuable.
Terrific. I think it's words of wisdom for everybody to live by, both in work, at home, and anywhere else for that matter. Then what's the next big goal for you?
Like for business wise?
For the company, for the organization, for you professionally? Is there another company in your future, or sticking with the mortgages for now?
the mortgage business right now is a good business. It's really strong cash flow. For me personally, building my private equity portfolio, we're doing some trading. So we kind of have different buckets going on. I have an 18-month-old and a pregnant wife. So, I've been in an entrepreneurial organization for 7 years. And so I've been able to be around a lot of wisdom in my forum. And I recognize and realize how a lot of regrets through my forum have been not having the time to spend with their kids and watch their kids grow. So I think for me, time is probably one of my most valuable commodities right now. And I think it's going to become more and more valuable as my children start to age. And so I think that, smart investing, continuing to, grow the company, organically on its route, but also maintain, my time and my lifestyle, knowing that, these kids aren't gonna be kids forever. He's only 18 months old and my wife's due in August. And so, I want to be a present dad. I want to be able to be there for them. I want to drop them off at school, pick them up. And I think that's going to be pretty meaningful for their upbringing and for me as well.
I think it's so important to build that intentionality into your work life, your work style, your work culture, and to the business structure for that matter, because that the mythical work-life balance is something that everyone talks about, everyone strives for, everybody basically acknowledges is not possible to have balance, quote unquote, but how do you integrate them? And that certainly was something that from the time that I decided to hang out my own shingle was an intention as well. I wanted to create something where I would have the flexibility, at least, to be able to lead both hemispheres of life, the work and the personal, and be mom and be wife. Of course, neither of those were in the picture at the time back when I first launched out on my own, but very glad that I built that structure in proactively so that when those roles did become part of my life, that I was able to roll into it. And I think it's great to hear a man doing the same thing and building his life and building his businesses in a way to allow for that, because then that also, to me, indicates the kind of boss that you will also be and what you will,
Sure.
tell me if I'm wrong, but the kinds of balance and integration that you would expect to your people to be able to take advantage of as well.
100%. Yeah. Everyone that knows that and knows my heart and now just how I am, I think that's a little bit my ethos, and I think people gravitate towards that. And that's why I think I've been able to develop and also bring, some of my key employees along with me, because the integrity is, through and through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Loren, this brings us to the Listener 24-Hour Influence Challenge. And this is an opportunity for you to talk directly to our listeners and challenge them to take one step that they can complete within 24 hours so that they can have more influence. How would you like to challenge our listeners today?
I would say go and buy the book, Influence. I believe Robert Cialdini, I'm probably butchering his name, but
Cialdini, sure.
Cialdini, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And start to read it. Just get through 10 pages of it. I think getting in motion is, inertia. And hopefully that if you're not already a reader and an avid knowledge gainer, that might spark your journey, because I've never met a successful person that is not thirsty for knowledge, continually reading, listening, learning.
Yes.
Growing.
Yes. I'm a big fan of his work, again, Robert or Bob Cialdini, and books like Influence and Persuasion and those kinds of, big fan as well. So even if you just order them, that's an easy one. Just click and go, and it'll show up on your doorstep in 48 hours or so, and hopefully then crack that book and get through the first couple of pages. I couldn't agree more. Great reference. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
All right. Well, this brings us to looking at how you lead your people. And we've already really talked quite a bit about that, which I love that it's so integrated. When you think about things like executive presence, otherwise known as leadership presence, command presence, that it factor that just lets you know that that person's a leader. What does that look like to you? How do you recognize it or evaluate it in others?
I would say there's probably three buckets that I look for. One, obviously, would be, experience and competence, right? They need to know and be an expert or close to what they're doing. I believe that breeds confidence. And I believe the third bucket is integrity. People need to trust you and know that you're going to do what you say you do. And I think when all those three things meet, you're going to have a very strong leadership presence individual.
And I think along with that, when you're looking for it, how would you recognize that in an interview when you're looking to hire somebody, either locally and in person, domestic, or we talked a lot about international outsourcing.
Sure.
How would you look for those things?
So we follow the Jeff Smart, the Who process, and I recommend every one of your readers or who are trying to become executives or get raises or advance in their career, read that book, because a lot of corporations follow it. It's kind of the gold standard for hiring.
And say it again. What was the title of that book?
It's called The Who by Jeff Smart. I think
Okay.
it's Jeff Smart. Yeah. It's kind of the gold standard for hiring, and a lot of corporations use it. So one, you'll get an inside look at what they're looking for. And two, in that process, they have a very good reference check, and they ask really good questions. And the questions that they ask, pretty much what it goes through is their work history, and they ask the same questions about each one of the jobs, and they're very tough questions, and you can see patterns, right? And so I think the next question is going to be, what are things I look for that's an automatic red flag, and that is, it's finger pointing. That is their fault. Oh, this person did this. This boss was an asshole. This guy did this, or this colleague was this, right? And then all of a sudden, what they're doing is they're trying to deflect accountability, which shows me that they're not going to have accountability themselves or personal accountability, and that's an immediate like.
Sure. I look, if people can't. We understand no relationship is perfect and no boss is perfect and no job is perfect. But if you're just going to blame everything on somebody else and be the victim, then
exactly. And you'll see a pattern too, because the way that they ask the questions, you ask about every single one of their jobs on their resume, right? So you start to see a pattern. They can't escape it. They'll start talking. You ask questions, they'll talk, and then the reference check portion is amazing as well, because as you go through the interview process, you ask about their bosses and their colleagues and their coworkers, and then you ask them as a reference, okay, when I call this person, what are they going to say about you, right? Now they can't just handpick their own references themselves, like their brother who they said they worked for, and then you have the same process of references. So it's, when you follow that process, like I said, is the gold standard, and it's very hard to be able to hide from who you really are, and that's kind of what it's made for. So.
And that's a really interesting question to ask somebody, is if, when I call this reference, what are they going to say?
Exactly.
What do you anticipate they're going to say? So of course, then there's a good chance that they're going to hang up with you and call that person and say, by the way, if this guy calls you to be a reference for me, drop this line.
Well, the cool thing is you go through there. Oh, who's your boss? Okay, cool. When we talk to your boss there, what are they going to say about you? So you don't even allow them to pick the reference. You pretty much pick their references for them.
Right.
And then, if they have an issue with talking to them, then, now the truth comes out. Well, why do you have an issue with us calling that person, right?
Right. Okay. So everybody out there, if you are thinking about at some point down the line, interviewing for another opportunity, be mindful of how you address these elements and whose names you give, et cetera, because you don't want to be caught in something that you're going to need to qualify afterwards, right?
You're not going to be able to hide from, I think the best solution is be honest. And if your honest version of you isn't someone that someone would want to hire, then you need to look inside and work on whatever qualities bubble to the top. When you ask yourself that question that you need to work on, is where you need to focus your energy.
Yes. And speaking of focusing energy, when your teams in the past, be it for the pharmacy or with mortgages or with whatever other, many of the teams that you've run, when your people are bringing an idea to you, they want to pitch a concept to you, pitch a project. Give me a time when they brought something to you and it just did not go well, and you just sent them back to the drawing board and said, nope, if you're going to bring this, don't come back until you've done X, Y, Z. What should they have done differently?
Yeah, good question. So my whole pet peeve is I don't like people bringing me like a concept. Oh, this would be a great idea. Well, why? So I've been a strategic coach for a couple of years. I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Sullivan and his program, but I make people put together, if they have an idea, okay, go do an impact filter, bring it to me. Let's review this impact filter. If we want to do that, go do a strategy circle, bring it to me. You go over the obstacles. That way we kind of have a game plan. I don't like ideas. I think ideas are great, but if they're just pie in the sky and fluff, then you're wasting my time. Use some tools to bring an execution plan for what you're doing and be prepared, right? Like, don't just fly by the seat of your pants on any crazy good idea you think that you have. If you want to get the boss's attention, put it into structure, put it into a game plan, have an execution plan, forecast obstacles, how you can overcome them, all of those things, so that, oh, that makes sense to me, as opposed to, hey, I got this idea. That's my kind of, that bugs me.
So Well, this brings us then to the speed round. And these are three topics that regularly arise in my coaching and training with clients where people tend to think of them as black and white issues. And they're concepts that people often get stuck on, mentally stuck, a little head trash, et cetera. And we want to disabuse people of these ideas or the idea that it's going to hold them back and that they're the only ones who struggle with that. Because that's something that I hear a lot too. Oh, I'm the only one who struggles with this, or it's so hard for me, but so easy for everybody else. Rarely the case. So first, in a single word or phrase, tell me public speaking, love it or hate it?
Don't prefer it.
Okay, so not quite in hate, but definitely not in the love. Stronger on the other side. Sure. Okay, and yet you're very comfortable here on the podcast. So to some extent, in certain contexts, that it's clearly not something that you shy away from, or at least run from. So what's a tip that you can share with everybody about how to speak with confidence, even when you don't necessarily feel it?
Practice and educate, and make sure you're speaking about something that you know and understand well. I think that's anything that you try to tackle in life or in business would be practice and education, and then speak about something that you really understand and that you practice so that you come off confident.
Right. And that comes right back to that topic of confidence again, not to the extent of arrogance, but you got to be able to project the confidence one way or another.
I know what you're talking about.
Yes. Yes. And with that, do you consider yourself more of an introvert or an extrovert?
Definitely an extrovert.
Okay. And as an extrovert, what's one of your personal inherent strengths, and what's an area that you need to work on still?
Personal inherent strengths is I feel like I'm a very likable person. I'm able to bond with people on a deeper level very quickly, and it's done me well throughout my life because I can get to deeper, more intimate, trusting relationships very quickly, and people sense it as something that's genuine. It's not fake, and it just comes, I think, is something I was probably kind of born with.
Okay, and the area for growth?
I need to be tentative to people that aren't super extroverted, because I can tend to be hog attention or domineering sometimes in conversations, not letting people finish, interrupting, not being aware of my eagerness to talk or respond. Those are things that I continue to work on that can be, I'm sure, frustrating for other people sometimes.
Sure. I'm right there in that bucket with you. And finally, as far as conflict is concerned, no one likes it, but is your natural DNA hardwiring to want to avoid it at all costs, or want to dive in and just fix it right away?
Dive in and fix it right away by far. But what I've learned is that you can only do that with a level head. And so before I try to dive in and fix anything, try not to do it in an emotional state, right? Anger, frustration, fear, anxiety, all of those things.
So how do you do that? How do you, when you feel that the adrenaline kicks in, and how do you take that step back?
Pause and breathe. You need to have an anchor inside of you when you realize that that's going on, that you can feel, and it'll trigger you to realize, stop, breathe, slow down, analyze. Let me figure out how I really feel about this, not be overwhelmed by what I think I feel and burn this thing down. And then when you have, your wits about you, and you've been able to look at the situation and ask yourself, do I really care about this? And now what's the real conflict here? How can I address this and get to where I need to be with this from a level head? But, I don't know anything that's ever been accomplished successfully out of anger, right?
Sure. Yeah. I always say, don't let your emotions drive the bus.
100%. That bus is going off a cliff if you do.
Very nice. Well, we got to stay away from cliffs. We want everything to be just a nice uphill climb for success, of course.
Yeah.
That's terrific. Loren, how can people learn more about you and your many organizations?
Yeah. LLHdevelopmentrealestate.com, primeplushardmoney.com. You can look me on Facebook. I actually have a couple of world records in indoor rowing if they want to go watch some indoor rowing videos. They can Google me. I don't know. Email me, Loren at LLHrealestate.com. That's LOREN at LLHrealestate.com. I love interacting with people, helping people out, answering questions. I'm a very easy guy to get a hold of and to respond to. So feel free.
That's great. And we'll put all those in the show notes. So if you didn't have a chance to jot those down as quickly as you rattled them off, then just take a quick look and we'll make sure they're all correctly spelled, URLs and all. So that's terrific. Loren, once again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Laura, I had a pleasure. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully I was able to add a little value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a great time, and I'm sure everybody else did too. So for those of you out there listening, thank you as always for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes so we can help even more people increase their confidence, presence, and influence. And finally, if you want to download my quick start guide to mastering the 3 C's, command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal, go to speakingtoinfluence.com. I'm Dr. Laura Sicola, and you're listening to Speaking to Influence, Communication Secrets of the C-Suite. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Laura Sicola, and I want to sincerely thank you for listening to the Speaking to Influence podcast. If you love listening to these episodes as much as I love bringing them to you, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And please go to iTunes right now to rate and review our podcast in order to help us expand our reach so even more people can master the 3 C's to command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal.
Thanks for listening to Speaking to Influence, Communication Secrets of the C-Suite, the show for leaders who want to speak with impact. The hosts, producers, owners, and media distributors of the show make no guarantees that the strategies and information discussed will result in profit or other success and may result in losses. The opinions and statements of the hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the owners, staff, managers, broadcasters, or sponsors of the show. No medical or psychological therapy or personal or professional wellness or relationship advice is offered in the show. You are advised to seek counsel on matters related to your health, family, relationships, job, or other business and legal matters from licensed advisors in those areas prior to making any changes in business or lifestyle. No information provided may be suitable in your situation. As always, take responsibility for the decisions and actions you take, including the reactions they may make in your work, family, health, and life.